travel isn't just about destinations, it's about the people you meet, the cultures you immerse yourself in, the stories you carry home. I'm Relebogile Mabocha, and on my travel feature, I take you on a journey beyond the guidebook. Each week, I connect with fellow travelers, insiders, and storytellers to bring you the heart of every place. Whether it's a hidden gem right here in South Africa or a dream destination abroad. Join me as we travel through conversations, memories, and inspiration. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
And Warren, of course, is a certified financial planner at Galileo Capital. You've heard so many times, you hear so much about how to invest. There are lots of different concepts. Warren, good evening. Tonight you want to focus on keeping things straight and simple.
I have to, Stephen. It's the only way I can understand it, and I think the business of money, and especially personal finance and investing, is often very scary for a lot of people. And anyone that's gone to a doctor and had them ask you a bunch of questions in a language that sounds very far from English, or a mechanic who tells you about something in your car might have an understanding when you go to a financial person and then they start to spew all this jargon at you. It just seems phenomenally intimidating. And for a lot of people, I think they tend to avoid the conversations around money just because they're afraid that they might look silly, or that they might seem ignorant and might not understand the world of money. And I think it can be a relatively simple thing. It's made complex by my industry, and there's reason for that. These guys all got to get paid somehow, but you can make this simple, and you can manage the world of money fairly effectively by following a few key principles, and don't get intimidated.
I mean, a lot of it is about the words, and I love the fact that you picked up on the language, because so much of it is about the words that are used, the jargon, the almost a deliberate attempt to make people feel like an outsider.
I think so. And what I've realized over time is the people in the financial services industry who are confident and experienced often find ways to make things sound simple. But people who are not confident in their ability, don't understand their subject well, they are the ones that spew the jargon most often. But when you look at in the old days, it would have been brochures, but nowadays, I guess, websites and the like, you'll see an enormous amount of language there that's very difficult for people to understand. And to me, I think, if we make the language complex, and even if you're kind of a English language, major at university, the moment you look at a financial services brochure, the likelihood is by the second or third paragraph, you've found a bunch of words and sentences that you won't understand. And it doesn't need to be like that. I think it's often designed for obfuscation, not really for clarity.
All right. So first, a couple of first points. The first is that this is a long game. You are in it for a long period of time. It's a marathon.
I think it's, I read a saying this week that says, to have a future, you have to survive the past. And I thought, that's just explains the world of investing and the world of money, in a nutshell. Because a lot of the time when people talk about investing, we'll see all these beautiful graphs about the power of compounding, and Warren Buffett's retirement, which we've spoken about. One of the kind of secrets to his success was simply remaining invested for a very long period of time, and that's true, 100% true. And so maybe the very first thing to understand is you cannot be successful in building your own wealth, whatever that might mean for you. You can't do it unless you just get started. And I think very few people just take the leap sometimes. And we can discuss why, but I think that, that intimidation factor is there. So maybe just to say, that number one, just get started. Just start putting a little bit of money away, and try and, if you can, do a debit order, or do an amount every 3 months or every 6 months, whatever it is, and then let the money grow. If we think about what's happened in the world in the last couple of weeks, and maybe in the last couple of days, you could be forgiven for being really terrified about tariffs going between China and America, and all sorts of big potential threats to trade being blocked, or whatever it is, sanctions and the like. All of those are reasons to be fearful, but what's interesting about the world of investing is if you ignore all of that stuff and you put your money into the markets and you let the markets do their thing, they go up and down like crazy. And you and I will do lots of shows about volatility and why things are going crazy now. But the reality is, someone who just puts their money in and let it go and let it grow and grow and grow without pulling it out the whole time, those are the people that are successful. And the reason they are successful and everyone else isn't is because these are the people that just stay invested, they stay calm, they don't get impatient, and they never panic. And that's probably, if we had to talk about the superpower that we have as ordinary individuals over the big institutions, it's that we can take a very long-term view when most institutions, most unit trust fund managers and pension fund managers don't have that luxury, because they're investing on behalf of people who are panicking and who are pulling money out. And we don't need to do that. So if we do realize that it is a long game, and remind yourself the whole time, you can't have a future if you don't survive today, and that means stay invested, then you've got somewhere to go.
I mean, a lot of it is, and I know people pick and choose. I mean, I spend half of my life nowadays talking about this stock or that stock. But so that can be a bit like playing Russian roulette. You've got to avoid that.
So we've got to talk about this. I often say the phrase, and I think maybe I'm giving away my age, but we see this in movies. It's usually the movies about the mob, and someone takes a whole lot of bullets out of a revolver and puts one in the revolver, and usually there are 5 or 6 bullets in a revolver. Then they spin that revolver, and someone puts that revolver to their head and pulls the trigger, hoping that the bullet isn't in the chamber that's just been clicked. And to me, I mean, the reality of investing is you don't want to make decisions like that. And a lot of the time, it will come down to the hype share of the moment. So be it Nvidia, or it'll be some new hype share of the time where everyone else has made money apparently, and everyone's talking about a share, or it could be a crypto, or it could be whatever the next big thing will be. Now taking your hard-earned money and putting it all into that, or allocating a large proportion into something that's the current flavor of the month, is very much like playing Russian roulette. You're giving yourself a very small chance of making a lot of money, but what you're also doing is giving yourself a very large chance of losing your money. And I think that's the point people don't understand around playing Russian roulette with your money is you don't want to take those gambles, and that's really what they are, where you're hoping for a very big bet to pay off by taking an extremely risky investment decision. Rather be very consistent and again. Play the long game and say, well, gee, I don't understand the new big fangled whatever it is, whether it's a new chip company or a self-driving car. It doesn't matter. If you're reasonably spread and diversified in your investments, doing that and hoping to plod along with your investments will give you a very good chance of making money over a long period of time and avoiding those huge risks, which are most likely going to clean you out. And I can't tell you how many times I meet someone who says, I'm not investing in the stock market. Every time I do it, I lose money. And when you ask them why, it's usually because they've taken a bet on one share, played Russian roulette.
Sure. I mean, I can understand the temptation and people sell it. And there's also, I think part of it is you want to be a part of something. I think that's part of it. There's a lot of emotion there. We need to talk a little bit about debt, Warren. And obviously, through our lives, we are going to have to take on some debt in some ways just to live or to really build a home.
So I'm going to talk about another very kind of movie theme, and that's a Western called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Stephen. There is a form of good debt, and that's when you buy something with debt that will appreciate in value faster than inflation. In other words, for most of us, it will be the home we're going to live in, and the hope, it's not a guarantee by any means, but the hope is, if you borrow money via a mortgage and you buy a home and you stay in that home for the next 10 or 20 years, there is a fairly good chance that the home will grow in price at a faster rate than the cost of living, faster than inflation. That's good debt. That there is a reason to borrow money. The kind of neutral debt would be when you buy a car because you need to go to work and you need to earn a living. And the only way most of us can do that, especially when we're young and we're starting out, is we have to borrow money to do that. And I understand it. I think that makes sense. So to me, those are the two debts that are reasonable and responsible for us to take. Everything else, when you take on debt to buy something which has no value, which isn't going to grow faster than the inflation rate, is debt that I think should be avoided. Credit cards, personal loans, overdrafts, all of those. And for me, those kinds of debt are a weapon of wealth destruction. We're in a position where we're buying stuff, especially on credit cards, where potentially your interest rate is 20 or 25% a year. And there is no high quality investment that will give you that kind of growth rate with a reasonable probability of delivering over the next 10 or 20 years. You would have to be phenomenally lucky to borrow money at 25%, put it in an investment and get a better return than the interest you're paying. And to me, that's a form of Russian roulette again. So I definitely wouldn't want to borrow money to invest, especially in stuff I don't understand. And I'm happy to put money into a home. And as I say, neutral debt is buying an affordable car. And I think maybe that's the mistake a lot of us make, is we don't buy the affordable car. We buy the car that our salary can sort of justify, and then leave ourselves no money for petrol, for saving, for insurance, medical aid, and all the other things.
Yeah, no, there's so much that happens around cars and debt. 011 883 0702 021 446 0567. How to keep investing simple. Personal finance with Warren Ingram. We've got a question from Chris as well, Warren. He's asking, is it better to pay off my home loan before I start investing? We'll have Warren's answer in a moment.
The Money Show.
Personal finance with Warren Ingram.
And that question from Chris for you, Warren, is it better to pay off my home loan before I start investing? And I imagine this is a very interesting question that a lot of people are going to ask at different phases of their life.
And because your home loan, could take somewhere around 10 to 20 years to pay off, it's a question that's going to face you for a reasonably long period of time. And I think it's I think it's very hard to just say yes or no, do one or the other. One of the things about the world of money is there doesn't always have to be, the one choice or the other choice. You could always do both. And I think when you start out and you've got a home loan that you've got 20 years to pay off, and it's a huge amount of money, I'd probably not invest very much money at all, and I would spend the first few months, if not first few years of the home loan period, paying off that home loan, trying to make a big dent in it. So if your home loan repayments are whatever they are, 15,000 a month, try and pay 17,000 a month, because that early repayment of an extra amount into the home loan makes an enormous difference later on in life. You find that you can cut the period of the bond by maybe 3 or 4 years by just paying an extra few thousand into the bond, especially in those early days. So if you can do that for a period of time, and you make a big dent in the bond, and you get ahead of where the bank wants you to be on those home loan repayments, then by all means start investing alongside the home loan repayment. So you might say, well, I'm now doing 19,000 a month into the bond, so I'm going to start doing an extra 2,000 a month, into savings, into investments. And nothing wrong with that. I think doing both makes sense, but you just want to make sure that you've got some breathing room in the bond, and often using your extra paid off money in the bond as an emergency fund makes sense. But I think if you can do that, if you can just get ahead of it, and if something goes wrong, at least you've got a bit of a safety net built in the bond, then go for it and start investing. For some people, I'm one of them. I just don't like to be told what to do at any stage, and owing a bank money feels like being told what to do, and it bothers me. So I'm going to go flat out as fast as I can to pay off my debt, and then I'll start investing again, because I just don't want to owe anybody any money. So preference does matter in this.
I mean, but doesn't that mean that if you were to, if markets move more than inflation, I mean, so should your home. But isn't the trade-off really between what you expect the value of your home to do and what you expect the value of whatever you can invest in markets to do? Isn't that the trade-off?
That's certainly a big factor, Stephen. Also, interest rates. If you're paying There was a time when we as South Africans would have been paying interest at a rate of 13 or 14%. And if the stock market's giving you around 12.5% a year, then it makes no sense to invest. It makes all the sense in the world to try and pay off the home loan as fast as you possibly can. There was a time not that long ago when prime was very low and you could get an interest rate of 7% or so on a home loan, and if that time comes again, then you might say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to pay off on a monthly basis the minimum and maybe invest a bit more, because if I can get a return of 12.5% on stock markets and I'm only paying 7 on my bond, well, I can be a bit slower on the bond. So I think that interest rates versus market growth is an important factor. I think if you're in a property market that's booming, and you're in a sector where prices are going well, it is tempting to pay off a bit more. But if your plan is to live in that house for the next 10 or 20 years, you're probably going to go through 3 or 4 very big cycles in the property market. So I wouldn't focus on that as much as the interest rate cycle.
Somehow ended up in a Cape Town and Joburg conversation in my head there for some reason, as soon as we started talking about property prices. We need to talk about insurance. And obviously, this is a conversation about keeping things simple, but insurance is a must-have.
It is, and especially early in life. So it feels very frustrating when you're trying to build up some savings and you're trying to build up your investments, and then someone's telling you you've got to pay for insurance. And the very simple reason is you can't afford risk when you've got no assets. So if you've just financed your car, and you drive it out the second-hand dealership, let's hope, and you crash that car and you've got no insurance, you've got a real issue now, because you've lost the asset and potentially you financed it. So you've got a real problem and no other assets to help pay off that problem you've got now. So in that instance, it's the most rational, sensible thing you can do is actually take out insurance on the stuff that you need to generate an income so that you can start saving. And the same will apply to your health and to your ability to earn an income. So, being able to get access to good medical care via some kind of a hospital plan makes sense. And then again, some form of disability or income protection, especially early on in your career, makes a huge amount of sense to me. As you get older and you start building up your assets and you get more and more capital available, by all means, reduce your insurance. You might get to the point later in life when you don't need disability insurance and you don't need life assurance. I think you should always have medical insurance and insurance on your stuff, but maybe you don't need so much. And so you can reduce later when you've got assets. But when you've got no assets and no backup plan, insurance is your backup plan, and it's the thing that might separate you from absolute financial disaster for the rest of your life.
And then, and I think I know what the answer to this is going to be. Is there a particular superpower when it comes to investing over time?
I think knowing that we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and I can't tell you, how many times we have this kind of a conversation, around the dinner table, around the braai. When I wake up every morning, one of the very first things I do is I look at my weather app. And I don't know why I do that, because the weather app is probably as reliable as a toss of a coin. But I still do it because I want some form of certainty. I want, even if it's a machine that's not really that reliable, to tell me what the weather's going to do today. What I should do is just look out the window. But it's the same with investments. We want to know what's going to happen tomorrow and in the next few months and years ahead. And the truth is, no one knows. There isn't a single person out there. I mean, if you're an American, I don't think you can predict what Trump's going to do tomorrow, and maybe he can't predict what he's going to do tomorrow. So knowing that, and knowing that the investment markets, the weather, currencies, politics, even sport are unpredictable, is a superpower. Being humble enough to say, I don't know and no one else knows, gives you a heck of an advantage, because everyone else is looking for certainty. Some people are not humble enough to know that they don't know, and some people, they have a form of arrogance where they think they are cleverer than the markets, and that means they're just waiting for an accident to happen. If you say to yourself, I don't know, the best thing you can do then, spread your investments across a range of different markets and over time, and sit back and watch the story unfold, knowing that you don't know what's going to happen.
Warren Ingram, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. A certified financial planner at Galileo Capital.